Welcome back to Something in the Wilderness podcast. On each episode of this show, we think of Andrew McMahon's entire catalog and choose one song to discuss from it. It's always nice to meet a fellow Andrew McMahon fan, and I've been really fortunate to meet several lately. Recently, I met a fan who shares a name with one of Andrew's songs, and she agreed to come on the show and talk about some music. So welcome to the show, Amy.
Hi, I'm happy to be here. I like to say this podcast is everything I didn't know that I needed in my life, so it's great.
Well, awesome. To me, that's quite a compliment, so thank you.
You're welcome.
So can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, so I'm 27. I live in rural northern New York. I'm a big music listener. It's definitely kind of like therapy to me. I really like the lyrical aspect of it. Mm-hmm. And seeing how, artists or writers can say things in a creative or interesting way, it kind of makes me emotional. I'm like, how can someone just say that amazing thing with words? So yeah, I love all kinds of music, from country to rap to 2000s emo to Andrew McMahon. So yeah, and I've been an Andrew McMahon fan since I was 8 or 9 years old. Oh,
wow.
Yeah.
All right. I can definitely relate to the lyrical aspect. It's as you could probably tell by what I've said on the show before. It's the lyrics are so important to me in most music I listen to, and of course Andrew's a prime example of that. So
yes, definitely.
So what you said you got into Andrew like when you were 8 or 9 years old. What brought you into Andrew's kind of world?
Yeah, so my introduction to his music was through my oldest sister. We're 11 years apart. So when she was in college, I was, 8 or 9, and she discovered the song Constantine, going through a breakup, and that started her deep dive. And so when she would come home, on breaks and visits and stuff, we would be driving in the car, and that's all she would play in the car. So I started to learn the songs just through those car rides. And as I got older, I kind of began my own deep dive into, all the catalog. And I remember listening to, she had Firescape's album with Josh, Josh Partington's band. And she had, she had William Tell's album. And then
she was a hardcore Something Corporate fan.
Yeah.
She followed all of them.
Yes. And she, when she likes something, she goes right in. So I appreciated it because, I got all these CDs and, that ended up becoming Everything in Transit. And so I remember listening to that probably the most, just because as I aged, I paid attention more. And I learned a lot of songs in those car rides. Eventually downloaded the songs and just kind of got my hands on everything that I could. And I'd grab, North, and I'd grab Audio Boxer, and I would hold these these prized possessions. And to me, they were. She had signed posters, and she was really into it. So that was around 2002 when she was first introduced, and it's been a sister thing kind of ever since.
Okay, so you've kind of been there from the beginning. In a sense, though, it sounds like.
Yeah, in a sense, but just that step back, because there was no going to concerts, at 8 years old.
Right.
I was there, but it's a little blurry, and I do have this early on connection that it definitely developed more later on.
That's really cool. See, my brother and I did share some musical tastes. He's 2 years older than me. But ironically, I just introduced my brother to Jack's Mannequin recently.
Nice.
And he had never even heard of them. Like a lot of people who just kind of follow music they enjoy and don't veer too far off the path. When I told him about the concerts I was going to see a few weeks ago, he's like, "What is that?" And actually, the restaurant we were sitting in was playing a Jack's Mannequin song. That's why it came up.
Oh, nice.
Which was, it's so weird. It was an odd coincidence. But he ended up texting me a few days later. He was like, "Oh my gosh, I'm listening to Jack's Mannequin, and it's so good." And I'm like, yeah. We don't have that kind of relationship where we introduce each other to music, but that's really cool that you and your sister did.
Right.
One of my best friends growing up, my best friend growing up, his siblings were 8 and 10 years older than him. So it was kind of like that. Like he, by association, myself, we would get our music taste a little bit from them in a way. So that's really cool. So I have to address this just because I rarely talk to people who share a name with an Andrew song title. So what are your thoughts on the song Amy I?
Yeah, so I remember when the track listing was released on iTunes for People and Things, and the songs weren't available yet, but you could see every one of the songs, and
Hmm.
I saw it, and I was just like, that is the coolest thing ever. Yeah, I was just kind of freaking out a little, and I mean, it's such a good song. I think a lot of people agree, and I didn't see it live until 2014, and he actually had said, he goes, I usually don't play this, or I haven't played this in a while, but I just want to play it tonight. And I looked at my sister and I was like,
Oh.
and it starts, I'm like, oh my God. That concert was actually, it kind of went viral on YouTube.
Mm-mm.
It's Andrew McMahon's in the background, Matt Nathanson. It was, Andrew was opening for him.
Okay.
And he invites Andrew on stage, and they were supposed to do a cover of Tom Petty's American Girl.
Mm-hmm.
And instead, he joked around about playing You Shook Me All Night Long. And so he starts it and he's joking around, and all of a sudden the crowd just takes over and we start singing the song, and he played it as a joke, and we finish it out, and his guitarist does the solo, and Andrew's in the back like, what is going on? And he's laughing so hard, and it just was like one of those once in a lifetime crowd moments.
Yeah.
He's in the background just like, oh my gosh. So looking back, I realized that was that night. And so it was just such a good concert because I got to see it live, and I saw that moment, and then that was actually the time that I got to meet Andrew. It was after that show.
Oh, okay.
And so I've heard you mention like, oh, I have these questions, or I want to ask him this, and I went blank, and I was just like, my name's Amy, and
we all do.
It was like, my name's Amy, and you played the song, and thank you, and oh my gosh, and it was just a really, really good night. And I don't know, it's cool having a little connection to one of his songs. And actually, my mom's name is Doris, so she has a song and his dog named after her.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
But your sister doesn't have, I assume your sister does not have the song.
No, he needs a song, Carrie, with a K, so.
Okay. Now, he does have a lot of songs that have women's names in them, but that's not one of them.
He does. Yeah, it's just something cool. And I know my boyfriend's, he's turned to me and he'll just randomly call me Amy I instead of just, Amy.
That's so funny. I was going to ask if anybody's ever sang that song to you besides Andrew.
No, but I thought when it came out, I'm like, oh man, if I really break someone's heart someday, they're going to give this song a listen and talk about how cold I am and how.
I've never felt this kind of cold before.
Exactly. And I kind of thought that, like, oh, I'll have a song that someone will listen to.
Someone that'll always remind someone of you. Hopefully not, though.
Right.
Hopefully you don't.
I know.
Yeah, don't go break it. Don't go breaking any hearts just to to have that. Well, I've found a few songs with my daughter's names in them, and they get such a kick out of it. We put it on we put those songs on a bunch of playlists so that like when we're in the car, they'll just randomly come up and we can all sing along. They're of course by random artists that we had never heard of before.
Right.
But it's just kind of funny, like there's these random songs out there with their names as the titles that I happen to find after they were born. They're obviously not named after these songs, but
right.
Well, since I've already done an Amy I episode, I guess we had to find a different song to talk about, but I got to say, you had plenty of suggestions that intrigued me when you sent me a handful of them. But ultimately, we agreed upon Hey, 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 We're All Gonna Die. Well, many of the songs on this album are more about his marriage and relationships. I'd say this one's probably about a different subject matter if I'm guessing. But I was excited about this one for several reasons. One is that it really doesn't tend to come up much in conversations with other fans, at least not the fans I talk to. So, in fact, I'd go so far to call it a deep cut. So did you first hear Hey, Hey, Hey as part of the album, or did you get introduced to it some other way first?
I first heard it through the album. And I mean, it was one of those ones that my first listen through, I was like, oh, this is good. But it didn't strike me like this is top 5 or this is top 10 or anything like that. I'm like, man, this is a good song. Mm-hmm. It's just one of those songs that it's just good.
Yeah.
And it doesn't even have to have a reason. It's just good. Mm-hmm. The song came on the other day. I was listening through the People and Things album in its entirety. I was just like stressed out. I'm like, I'm going to listen to some Andrew. I'm going to go for a walk. And across the street from my house is a cemetery. I've always thought they're kind of, just peaceful places to go. So we walk and it comes right on as soon as I get out of the cemetery. And I'm like, it just like, I had to laugh. It was just too much of a coincidence. And it I'm just like, yeah, it's true. I'm stressed out, but hey, like.
Yeah, that's odd with that. Yeah, that line.
Right.
But actually, I've always thought that main line, and we'll talk more about this, but I've always found that main line a little off-putting. And it's not that I'm against negative sounding songs, depressing songs, sad songs, angry songs, anything like that. It just always seemed a little weird with that catchy chorus with the line in there. So the band is, of course, Jack's Mannequin. This song, Hey, 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 We're All Gonna Die, was track 5 on People and Things. It was released on October 4th, 2011. And I got to say, I did like the fact that we're discussing the song that comes right after Amy I on the album, since I'm talking to an Amy. Does that mean you tend to listen to this song more often, or are you more of like a listen on shuffle type of person?
So I've always been a listen on shuffle type of person.
Mm-hmm.
And recently I've been trying to listen more with the songs back to back and see how they flow into one another.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a great way to revisit older songs to me, because I've always been that shuffle. And even when I do work, I do things out of order. I've always been that way.
Yeah.
So I kind of like putting the order back into it and seeing why he put it at which number, and why he started and why he ended with certain song. And
yeah,
so it's been a new thing for me to listen to it in order.
It's really funny you say that, going back and listening in order now. So I've listened to all these albums, per se, the opposite way. So I've listened to them all in order, and I knew them all that way for years. And I really do like the way they flow into each other, but it's always fascinating to me. And that's the way I listen to all my music, to start. When I get a new CD, or even if I'm just streaming, and I like to listen to it all the way through usually, at least when I'm first getting to know the artist or the album. But I do like to put it in playlists, because it's interesting to me, kind of the opposite of what you said. It's interesting to me how it flows in and out of other songs.
That's interesting, yeah.
And it's always really cool to me, like, what's it going to be before? What's it going to be after? That's always been fascinating to me. So in the age of iPods and then, now streaming,
yes,
that's always been a fascination for me. All right, so Andrew did write most of the song during the Glass Passenger sessions, and he didn't finish it for years. They ultimately decided not to use the track for that album, but they did name the album after a lyric in the song, The Glass Passenger. So years later, Andrew finally wrote the third verse to the song, and the band decided to record it. Do you think the song would have fit better on The Glass Passenger, or does it find itself at home on People and Things, do you think?
So it's interesting to me, because I can picture it on The Glass Passenger really well.
Mm-hmm.
And I was even looking at what song I would squeeze it in between. And at the same time, it goes so well to me, again, with Amy I. And even just talking about the cold, the feeling of it fits better on People and Things for me.
Mm-hmm.
But the sound, I feel like, is very Glass Passenger. So I feel like it's, it's a toss-up. I feel like it would have fit on either one. It wouldn't have been a surprise to me on either album. But I don't know. I like that story that he just kind of held off until it was right.
Yeah.
He kind of waited until he had more to say on it.
Yeah. I thought that was really interesting, too. The songwriting process is always really interesting to me, and how songwriters develop, what comes first, what comes last, and how they get from beginning to end. So that was really interesting to me, too. The album as a whole, People and Things, was more of a full band effort, which was different than the two Jack's Mannequin records, but it's also what makes, I think, this album unique in the Jack's Mannequin catalog, is that there were all these different musicians and all these different producers, and that paved the way more for Andrew McMahon in the Wilderness. So on this track alone, you have Andrew, Jim Scott, and Rob Cavallo all getting producing credit, as well as Jack's guitarist Bobby Anderson and the Jack's drummer Jay McMillan. They were also co-producers. And then you have Jim Wirt as an additional producer. And then I just learned recently that neither John Sullivan, the former bassist of Jack's Mannequin, nor Mikey Wagner, who was the new bassist of Jack's Mannequin at the time, neither of them appear on the album, because John left during the recording sessions. He wanted to do something a little bit different musically. And then Mikey came in, but although he was playing some shows with them, apparently he didn't want to ruin the vibe of what they had going on in the studio with the other musicians who had been around a while. So I thought it was interesting that neither bassist of Jack's Mannequin plays on this album at all. They had Bobby or Chris Chaney of Jane's Addiction. So the other people on the track are Bobby on guitars and string arrangement, Jay on the drums, Tim Pierce on guitars, Phil Parla piano, and Jamie Muhubarak on the Hammond B3 organ, Chris Chaney of Jane's Addiction on the bass, Maria Cuney on violin, Jeannie Lim on viola, and Mary Ginger Murphy on the cello. Now, did you notice all the strings on this song?
I don't don't have that kind of ear.
No, I'm the same way. And doing this podcast has made me realize how much I don't notice.
Right. And I like that, they did a great job. It all came together, perfectly. But I really should get away from the lyrics for just a little bit.
I tend to focus on the lyrics a lot too, like you do. And maybe that's part of it. But I don't know. I think it's a sign of good producing when they have all these instruments in the background, and it probably would not sound as good if those weren't there.
Right.
Even though we don't notice them outright, it probably wouldn't sound as good without the strings. And I think it's a sign of good production. So according to Setlist FM, this song's been played live 54 times, 5 of which have been at the old TLA in Philadelphia, as he calls it in the song. Are you familiar with the Theater of the Living Arts in Philadelphia?
I'm not. I Googled it because I'm like, what is the old TLA? And I've never been to Philly, so I haven't stopped at any of the Pennsylvania cities.
Yeah, I always appreciate when bands call out venues or cities in a song. And it's happened a few times where I've heard a venue or a city in a song that I've either lived in or been to, and I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
The last time this song was played in concert was actually at the TLA in 2018 as well. Like I said, they've played it 5 times there. So after the Saturday night concert in Pontiac, Michigan that my wife and I went to recently, we actually met a couple right after the show, and they said they live really close to the TLA. Before they said that, I thought of it like the next day or 2 days later. I was like, what is the TLA? And I looked it up and I was like, oh, that's a venue. Like, I never even put it all together. And it made me realize more of the meaning of this song by just them telling me that. He's talking about a venue in Philadelphia. This makes so much more sense now. I don't know why I never thought of that.
I mean, it flows. I feel like lyrically it flows right in there that you almost pass it up. Your mind doesn't go right to, what is that? It's just like, oh, it fits right in that line so well.
Definitely. So are you typically and I've heard you have seen Andrew in concert before. Are you typically a concert goer in general?
Yes, I love live music. I feel like I've been in a lot of those situations if I don't know the band as well or some songs. I'm like, man, this band or this artist makes me wish I knew every song. Or if I do know every song, it's just, I'm not like a big crowds type people, but if you put me in the middle of a concert, I'm in my happy place. Like, it's something I didn't realize, especially before COVID. I'm like, oh, I'll see them next time they come up. And now, like, I feel like I have all these concerts booked right now that I'm so excited to get back to. And I mean, even as far as this song, I'm surprised that it's not one that's played more live. I feel like it's set up to be a big crowd song. Like a sing-along song. Yeah, with the crowd shouting, hey, 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 back at him.
Yeah.
And even the line, sing with me just one more time, it's like, it's like a sing-along, just fun, even though you just, despite the lyrics, just fun concert sing-along song. So I'm surprised, and I've never seen it live, and I've seen a lot of kind of different tours. Yeah, I'm surprised he doesn't play it more often. I think he should.
Yeah, I've never seen this one perform live, and I was gonna say maybe this is one of the ones he should have played at the June shows, but we've got a fall tour coming up, so that would be a perfect opportunity. Like you said, the theme of the song, touring, and
right.
Yeah, so like there's a lot there. I think that would be very fitting in the year 2021 for us. So
definitely, yeah.
Yeah, and he hasn't played it on any of his live streams either. I don't know if you caught any of those last year when he was doing the Instagram stuff and some on YouTube. Most recently, he's got this new membership. You can sign up on Pillar. And I'm on there, and he actually did a live stream last week. It was, I think, an hour and 15 minutes long. He played a lot of songs.
That's amazing.
It was really good, and what was cool, I'm such a nerd about it. I keep track of all the songs he's done on his live streams, and I think like 7 of them are ones he had never done on a live stream before.
Wow.
Like since the pandemic, anyway. So it was really good. It's better quality now because he's got like his studio kind of set up for it now.
Right.
Instead of just like on his phone. It's cool. I did not hear that song, and I'm hoping maybe we will. But I'm thinking maybe the hey, 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 we're all going to die line, maybe it's a little too soon.
Didn't think about that. That could be true.
Yeah, that was one of my thoughts. When I was thinking, oh, I can't believe he hasn't played this on a live stream. I was like, he was trying to comfort us all in the live streams and during the pandemic.
Yeah.
Maybe that line wouldn't be so comforting.
Right. Definitely not.
Yeah. So some songwriting notes here. Andrew did state in an interview with Fuse TV in 2011 that with every album he writes, he feels like the subject matter is based on what he's living at the time, which you can definitely see through his albums over the years. Him growing up from being a high school kid writing music to a father and husband writing music now. But he and Kelly had been married about 4 years when he started writing this one. So most of the album is about his relationship with Kelly or about deepening relationships in general. I just have the impression this one's not so much about relationships based upon the lyrics that I hear. And I feel like this song's about a different aspect of his life, which we've already touched on, like touring in a band, right? But what's interesting about this album and what kind of makes this a standout song in that respect, at least lyrically, is that I think I only counted 2 or 3 songs in the whole album that doesn't seem to be about a personal relationship. I would say this is one of them. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I feel like this is like a very personal song to him.
Mm-hmm.
I think in a way it's just like a clap back at people. Like people are like, oh, you know, you're not ready to do this. You're not ready to go back out on the road. You should slow down. I feel like it's this kind of internal battle he probably had with, no, I need to get back out there.
Yeah.
And everyone else telling him, slow down, you know, it's good for your health. And he's probably thinking, no, what's good for my health is some normalcy and being back out on the road.
Yeah, coming off of cancer treatment. And he did get out there pretty quickly right afterward, which was a year or 2 before he wrote the song. So he's actually written several other songs about touring in his catalog. Do you think you could name one? Can you think of any other song that he's written about touring?
Put me on the spot.
And it's okay if you can't come up with one, but
I mean, I woke up in a car.
Yeah, there you go. You got one. Yep. Some other ones that besides I woke up in a car, some other ones I thought were about touring was Holes,
right?
Which I've also talked about on the show in a previous episode. He mentions, being out with a man on the road. Walking in My Sleep, I wouldn't have known was about touring, but he played that in concert last month. And he mentioned that. Teenage Rock Stars, that one was pretty clear. And then he also mentions touring in Sicily and the Satellite, but I would argue that that song is not about touring.
Right.
But he mentions touring in it. So I just thought that was kind of neat. I was thinking, I wonder how many songs he has about touring. But none of those that I mentioned, besides the one we're talking about today, are actually by Jack's Mannequin. So maybe there's some Jack's Mannequin songs about touring, but if there are, I don't know which they are. But speaking of touring, so Andrew said that he finished writing the song with the third verse when he visited the TLA again on the Glass Passenger Tour. So looking at Setlist FM, I saw that he was there in November 2008, where he played the song as part of the encore. So it does make me wonder, did he get up on stage like after, they were like, good night, and they came back for the encore? Was he just like, I think I'll play what I have? Or was he like, I just wrote this out on the bus and I'm going to play it for the first time as a full song now? Because I don't know if that was the first time he ever played it or not. I think it was, though. Maybe he just played what he had of it. I don't know. It was just kind of interesting to me because he mentions that interview I read. He mentioned that he wrote it on the bus when they were at the TLA. I just don't know if it was before the concert or after. I also don't know if it was in 2008, November of 2008 or not.
I wonder if he had been waiting to finish it. I wonder if he's like, I need to get this out. I need to sing this right now. It's finished. It's perfect. And he's like, well, why not now?
Yeah, if that was the case, I wonder if anybody got at least a video clip of him talking about it.
Right.
Because that would be kind of cool to see, like, what he said. This is a new song, or this is a song I've been working on for years, or kind of like what he said about the song. I'd be really curious to know. So in a clip you can find on YouTube, which I'll link in the show notes, there's a series. You can get it on Spotify as well, but it's also a video series on YouTube. On Spotify, it's called Introducing People and Things. And on YouTube, I think it's called Track by Track with Andrew McMahon. But he actually talks about every single song on People and Things.
I know.
I wish he would have done that for every song in his catalog. But there are others, but he does it for the whole album, which is really cool because he talks for like 2 or 3 minutes about each song. But he mentions in that interview that he was scared to finish writing the song, mostly because it was so close to the cancer treatment part of his life. And maybe he didn't want to think about dying at the time. But he just felt like it was right, like we've talked about when he arrived in Philly and saw the TLA, and he was like, yeah, I'm going to... The TLA line is in the second verse, but it's a third verse. I return to the scene of the crime, which is a cool line, and we'll talk about that one too. I just thought that was how songwriters get from point A to point B, lyrically and musically. It's just really fascinating to me.
Yes, definitely.
So let's talk a little bit about the sound of the song. I've always maintained that this album overall has kind of a different sound to it than the previous 2 Jack's albums, but I would say you could argue the same about all of them. I think each of them have their own distinct personality and sound, but I think there's several factors with this album that contributed to that. Like I think it was the multiple producers and the different producers. What do you think? Does a song like Hey, 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 We're All Gonna Die, does it fit well into the Jack's Mannequin catalog? Like, is it a fitting song right in the middle, or does it stand out for some reason?
I think it doesn't stand out, but it does remind me actually a little bit of The Resolution. It just has like a similar feel to me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it doesn't stand out, but at the same time, like, I just think it's special for some reason. And I can't put my finger on it, but it's just, I don't know. Maybe it's even the mystery that he doesn't play it that often, and I haven't heard it live, or I don't know what it is. It's just, I don't know. I just like it.
He definitely has songs that you can sing along to, obviously. A lot of us do, I'm sure. But what you said earlier, you said it'd be a great in concert and you could imagine everybody singing Hey, Hey, Hey back to him. And I was like, yeah, that does actually make it pretty unique of a song. Like, he has some songs that kind of have call and response or could do that in concert. But I got to say, this song's very memorable for me. Regardless of my opinion, whether I love it or hate it, it's very memorable to me, but I think it's because of that main line. If we were just casually talking about Andrew McMahon or Jack's Mannequin, like, I was like, hey, remember that band Jack's Mannequin from 10 years ago? And did you ever hear the People and Things album? And you were like, oh, which album was that? I don't know. You know, what are some songs that were on that? That's probably a song I'd point to in that conversation. I'd be like, that's the one with Hey, 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 We're All Gonna Die. Right in the middle of it. Because it's just such a unique line. To me, it feels like it kind of pops out in the middle of the album. I said it on the episode before. I love Amy I. It's one of my favorite Jack songs. But Hey, Hey, We're All Gonna Die stands out in a different way to me.
Yeah, and I like that, again, how it leads into it. It has this contrast to it, but it works because it kind of just pops up and you're like, oh, we're going kind of this direction, and it doesn't follow it exactly, which is nice. You don't want, I know I've listened to a lot of albums where they sound exactly the same and you go from one song into the other and you're like, didn't I just listen to that? So yeah, this one's definitely different. And it kind of, like, if he did make it more of like this on stage thing, I feel like it could take on like a La 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 aspect of like you get excited and it's just.
Yeah. Well, looking back to when this album came out, and I got it right away. Looking back to when it came out, my daughter would have been just a few months old. And so everywhere we went in the car, of course, we had our daughter with us. And I distinctly remember my wife looking at me and being like, what is this? Because she hadn't heard.
Right.
She wasn't as into Jack's as I was. She's become more of a fan in recent years than she was 10 years ago. But she's like, what is that? Because she was very careful. And we both were very careful about like what kind of music we'd play around our infant daughter. And then she was a toddler. And even as she's grown older, of course. So I distinctly remember like where we were in the car when she looked at me and said that. And maybe that's why it stands out so much to me. Again, it all comes back to that line. So I'll say more about that line in a minute here. So I mentioned the strings earlier, and we both agreed that they weren't like at the forefront or like real noticeable. But like I said, I think it's a compliment toward the people who put the song together, that it's like, well, it's there, and you may not notice it as much. And maybe the musicians who play the strings don't feel as complimented, but it's definitely a compliment to the overall song because, again, if you took that away, I just feel like it wouldn't be as good. And I think you would notice if you took any of those instruments away. Like, I don't know where the organ is in the song, but I'm sure it's there, and I'm sure it's distinct in certain pieces, and I would notice it if it wasn't.
I feel like there's like a lot of experimentation with instruments, and I just find that cool because, I don't know, some people just kind of play it safe, but I feel like, let's add this and let's do this. And
yeah. And Andrew's done a lot more of that in recent years, like especially with Zombies on Broadway and even the self-titled album, I would say. They brought some different instruments to the table than he had before. So I love how the song starts too. So it's just Andrew's voice and the piano. And I would have said it's only Andrew in the piano, but I did notice the strings are there in the beginning too. But then I love how in the pre-chorus and then as you get into the chorus, it becomes a full band song. I think that's like really impactful. I would say that's one of the parts I really enjoy about the song is when it materializes into this like full band song in the chorus. I got to say, I love the melody of the chorus. I've kind of danced around this topic so far, but I'm just going to come out and say it. I don't like the main line of the song. I don't think I said that earlier, but I don't. It makes me a little uncomfortable. I don't think it fits. Like, I love the song. I like the song. I love the verses. And I love the lyrics in the verses. But for some reason, there's some times in music I love when I'm just like, oh, if they had just made a different decision right there in that moment, like, I think I would like it 10 times more. That's one of those moments for me. Like, I don't know what it is. Again, maybe it comes back to that experience of my wife giving me that funny look 10 years ago.
Right.
But I don't know. It's like, Like maybe I felt guilty about listening to like, hey, we're all gonna die. Again, I listen to I've listened to some pretty dark music. Like I used to be really into Linkin Park. I listened to punk rock, pop punk. And I used to listen to industrial music a lot more. I'm not so much into that anymore. Like some really dark stuff. And I like sad songs, like I mentioned. I don't know what it is about that contrast between that line and the flow of the song. If it was hey,
right,
I don't know, something else. I maybe I'd like it better.
And that's funny because that's why I do like it. Is it's just so interesting, and it reminds me. I took a film class in college called soundtrack dissonance, where when you're watching a movie and there's this fight scene or there's this intense scene or gory or something, and they're playing this happy music like the Turtles or some kind of 60s like thing, and it makes me happy in a way because it's just so different, and you're listening to one thing and you're seeing the other, and your brain's kind of like, what is going on?
Yeah,
it's one of those songs you're like, hey, what are you listening to? Oh, hey, we're all gonna die. And you're like, are you okay? It's like, no, it's actually an upbeat song, and he does say that. He's like, no, it's an uplifting song.
Yeah,
to him it's uplifting, but it's definitely depends on who's listening to it.
Yeah, if you listen to the entire song, you read the lyrics, and this is a good time to talk lyrics. If you go through all that, you know that it's not like he's saying, hey, whatever, because we're all gonna die anyway. Like that's not what the song is. But I could see how just the title or just hearing that piece would make someone think that. And I don't know if that's where it comes from for me, not liking that part of it. It just seems like an odd fit for the song and for that part of the chorus, the way he sings it, because I love the way he sings it. It's like if it was different words, I think I would love that.
Right. See, to me, it reminds me of there's a quote, and it's "Don't take life too seriously. Like no one makes it out alive anyway." And that's exactly what it reminds me of. And I kind of grew up hearing that. I don't know who said it, but it's like walking my dog. I'm going through this cemetery, and I'm stressed, and I'm like, yeah, obviously everyone's stressed, and you obviously have to live your life to the fullest. You don't just give up.
Yeah,
but
right.
At the end of the day, if you just step back and you're like, okay, like it almost is like calming, like everyone, it's just the same. Like you're on level playing field with everyone in that aspect.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Yeah, in a world where you're constantly comparing yourself to people. And at the end of the day, you're on this level playing field.
Right, because we all have a limited time here, so we might as well make the best of it we can for ourselves, but the people around us as well, right?
Yeah.
Are there any specific lyrics that jump out at you from this song that are especially memorable or important to you?
Yeah, so definitely a New England turned gray, found the old TLA through the lens of my Polaroid camera. I just picture like Eastern United States, just, the dreary and the cold. And I mean, I'm from New York. So when he talks about like the East Coast and the wet, the beach and everything, it's like, okay, I can picture it, but I'm not as connected.
Yeah.
But this, like, I can picture it. And I mean, through the lens of my Polaroid camera, I feel like it's like, oh, he's documenting tour because, it's just such a special thing to him. I think it's an interesting lyric. And I can picture New England turning gray.
Yeah, I
really well.
Andrew's really good in his lyrics in a lot of songs, and I'd say most of his songs about painting a picture that we can visualize. And I think that's why people like you and I appreciate his lyrics so much. Is like I can see it, because there's a part of this song, a different part of this song, that I get this visual for. Like I don't know if it's like a vision of a music video that doesn't exist or like something, but there's something I see in my mind. It's interesting. It's really cool. Something you said. So you said, "In New England turned gray,
right.
Found the old TLA through the lens of my Polaroid camera." I never knew that was part of the same line. I thought it was New England turned gray from the old TLA, but it's actually found the old TLA through the lens of my Polaroid camera.
Yeah, one word can change it.
Yeah, so that was really funny, actually. There's another thing I found wrong in the lyrics I have in front of me, I think. Like, doesn't he say, "I'm the glass passenger" both times in the song?
Yes.
For some reason.
That's what I always thought.
I listened to it like 5 times today to be sure. And I'm 99.9% sure he's saying "I'm the glass passenger," which again makes so much more sense.
Yes.
And I've always thought that, but for some reason the lyrics I've printed say "on the glass passenger," O-N. I don't know, and I honestly didn't research this part. Do you know what he means by "I'm the glass passenger"?
So I didn't research it, but like The way and I talked to my sister about this too. The way I picture it is, I mean, when you think of Glass, and I also just watched Dear Jack, so I feel like I have that I watched it again, but I have it in the back of my head with that. But I said, when you think of Glass, like, it can be strong, but it can also be like easily broken. And to go along with that, like, he was in the driver's seat of his life for, many years and going on tour, and, he was in charge of everything. But with his diagnosis, everything, it was probably the first time he wasn't in control in his like adult years. And he also had to let people watch his recovery. People watch over him, help him out, even if he didn't want them to, even if he had that stubborn, like, no, like, I don't need help. I don't need you to be here right now and stuff like that. So it's like, whether it was his family, his friends, or even like the fans checking in for updates and how are you, that can be a lot. Like, even just having to update people, or you have to tell someone else how you're doing, but you're still trying to internalize how you feel, how you're doing. So I just feel like it's this, I picture this almost like this glass car, and he's traveling, but he's now in the passenger seat. He doesn't know where it's going. He doesn't know when it's going to stop. And people are just looking in right at him. That's what I picture.
I definitely like your interpretation. Yeah, I thought of Glass as fragile, but it sounds like you thought of it more as like you can see in. I really like that.
Right, both, because you can see in, but also like it's strong. So he thought he was strong, and he thought he like 21 and invincible and something corporate. He thought he was invincible and strong and this and that, and then it can easily be shattered.
Yeah, definitely. So the part that I get kind of the visual feels from in this song actually comes right after the part that you mentioned. So when I hear these lines, the label looked proud, the New York shows sold out, I noticed a change in the weather, it's getting cold, could you hand me my sweater? I've always had this impression, and I can like visualize the way that looks. And this is just my interpretation of what he may have meant, but I always thought it was like a way of saying, I always feel like my record label's looking over my shoulder, and I always feel like I have to prove something to them to keep my career, to keep my contract, to appease them. And so like the New York shows sold out, that's great news. They look proud, that's great news. But I noticed a change in the weather, and it's getting colder. And so it made me wonder if this was kind of a sign for him, if he was talking about a sign like, okay, this isn't going to be forever, or at least not with this label, it's not going to be forever. It's almost like I can imagine like what that looks like, which is really, really weird because it's so obscure. It's not like a concrete thing that's happening. It's like an idea, but...
That's interesting. I've never thought of it as that change in the weather. I took it literally, and I...
Yeah, and it might be.
Right, but that helped me visualize that New England and the New York and Philadelphia, just that kind of fall and coldness and everything.
Yeah.
I mean, when I watched Dear Jack, I was surprised, reps from his label were right there in the hospital room.
Yeah.
And I think it's like, oh, you stuck by me. Like, I have to return the favor to you.
Yeah.
And it could be that, this is going great, but
yeah,
it might not last forever. And
yeah. Because I know he's talked about times when, he came with some songs and they were like, we were looking for something different, And then the People and Things album is this, like, you bring in Rob Cavallo, who's produced for Goo Goo Dolls, Green Day. So he was like this huge hotshot producer. And it almost made me feel like, although I've heard Andrew say that he appreciated Rob's help and like he brought him in and all that, but it always gave me this impression. It was like, things are real hot right now, but things could get cold and I'm going to have to shift directions again. And maybe that was like looking toward the future. That's kind of the way I've always imagined those lines, though.
I like the mention of the sweater, too, because there are a lot of Andrew songs that he has that word in there. And one is like Last Straw, Arizona.
Oh.
You never sent my sweater. So I could stay warm when I was without you. So I think that's interesting because it's sweater and it's talking about sweater and cold and that's sweater and cold.
Yep.
And, I think there's another song too that he mentions sweater, but it's just interesting because it's like that little, like, kind of like with his space, the space.
Yeah, the sky and the stars.
It's one of those small things, and it hasn't...
Come back to Earth. Yeah.
Right. It hasn't been mentioned as much, but I'm like, oh, that's what I thought when I heard it. I'm like, there's another song with the word sweater.
Yeah.
He really likes his sweaters.
Sweater is not a word I've ever picked out in his song. Sweater is always a word I associate with Weezer because they had a hit song called The Sweater Song many, many years ago. There's other metaphors in the song as well. This lyric had never jumped out at me as something I never thought a second thing about. In the first verse, he says, "It seems there's science at hand, but I'll finish the shows when I land. I thought that was a really cool line considering what he just went through in the previous years, the science, and I'll finish the shows when I land. I felt like maybe that was, I'll finish the shows, I'll get back to work, I'll get back to the touring once I can, once I land, once I'm grounded again. I appreciate that line so much more once I dove in than I've ever, given myself a chance to appreciate it. But we should definitely talk about this last verse too, though, because this was the ultimate verse, right?
Yes.
It took him years to figure out how to end the song. Do you have any thoughts on this last verse?
Yeah, I mean, it's so good. And I know I can picture my sister whenever she listens to it, she gets to this part and she just kind of clutches. She's like, oh, it's so good. Like, it just hits her, right in the feels. Like, she loves it so much. And it's so good. I don't, feel it in an emotional way. I just feel it I feel it emotional, but just not as much. But I just love the way he said it.
Yeah.
So it's I love the way he said it versus she pictures him and she's like, oh, that's amazing. And but it's good. It's so good. It was worth waiting to write that part. Definitely.
I love return to the scene of the crime with my bus and my band. I'm taking a stand. And then, of course, the best, in my opinion, the best line of that verse is, so sing with me just one more time. Because it's okay, is it because he can finally get on the road and play again? Because another way you can look at this is, and we've kind of alluded to this already, we don't know when we're going to go. We're all on this level playing field. We don't know when we're going to die. This could be the last time we all get to sing together. And I think that's the way a lot of people felt at the concerts recently. And I could see when things open up and everybody gets to go to their favorite artist's show, there's going to be a lot of similar feelings out there. It's like, oh my God, we get to do this again. Is there going to be another time in the future where we can't do this? I need to enjoy it to the as much as I can.
Definitely, yeah.
So I think that lyric means more to me now. He wrote this song, 12 years ago or whatever. So sing with me just one more time. May have had something to do with cancer. We know that was the last Jack's Mannequin album. And in interviews he gave as the album was coming out, he kind of said, this is going to be the last Jack's Mannequin album. So with all that in mind, I wonder if this should have been the last song on the album. Was it their swan song? Was it their goodbye?
Right. It shows he's got so much left. We knew then, we knew he wasn't going to stop after Jack's Mannequin. So it's
right.
He has so much left. He has so much life left to live just with his family and friends and actually just living life. But he has so much left, with his band and touring, and he has, so much more music in him. So it's not the end of his life. It's not the end of his career. It's sing with me one more time, but we're going to keep going.
Yeah.
And there's a lot more to expect.
Yeah. There's a lot of different ways to look at that. So do you have a favorite part of the song, favorite line or piece of the song?
Definitely I've returned to the scene of the crime with my bus and my band. I'm taking a stand. Because like I said, it's just he wants to finish living, but living a full life. And
yeah, he's here, he's ready, he's ready to live again.
He's got a lot left to do for both. And it's just with my bus and my band, I'm taking a stand. It's
yeah.
I know, it's everyone has a lot to say about what's going on, but this is what I'm doing. I'm taking a stand. And it made me think of the slogan, stand up to cancer. Yeah, it might be better if I lay low, but I'm not going to let this thing rule my life any longer. And I'm taking a stand. And return to the scene of the crime, New York and his diagnosis and the hospital stay and everything there. So
yeah,
and I've heard your episode for one of the Zombies on Broadway songs, how he had those negative feelings of the East Coast in New York because of his diagnosis. So
right, because he associated it with that time in his life. Yeah.
So he's coming back. He's returning to the scene of the crime, and he's just gonna keep going. And
yeah.
He's taking a stand. But it also just makes me think of, I've mentioned it before, the 21 and Invincible. He's this young guy and he's I'm 21, I'm invincible, I'm ready to, just live life and everything. And I don't know, this song's just basically I could take it easy and found out that I'm not invincible, but at the end of the day, no one is.
Right.
So it's the follow-up almost, the adult version of 21 and Invincible. It's okay, wait, I learned that I'm not.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, no one is, and I'm just gonna live my life, and I'm not gonna slow down.
What's cool is he told a story about 21 and Invincible at the Pontiac shows in June. about basically exactly that. There was a time in my life where I thought I was invincible, and that's when I wrote this song. But he's like, a short time after that, I found out I was not. My favorite lines, I would say, were the ones that I read earlier regarding the label "Look Proud," the New York, and then I noticed a change in the weather. It's getting cold. But actually, my favorite part of the song is so right after he says TLA, he like hits these high notes on the piano, and it's just like sings TLA, and then he hits these high notes. I really like that part. I don't know, it almost like gets my heart. There's a lot of Andrew songs that like there's parts of it that just like, oh my gosh, I felt that, at certain pieces, and that's one of those times. I was like, okay, that was cool. That was a cool, like, whatever he did there, I loved it.
Yeah, and I think I always thought, oh, it's just the lyrics that make it flow, but I'm sure that piano part, it just works so well, and you're tuned right in. You're really picturing the song and
definitely
and the touring and everything.
Yeah. Did you get a chance to watch the People and Things short film, or at least the part that has this song on it? I
did, yeah. And I had never seen it before.
I've never watched it all the way through one after the other. Like I tried one day and I got distracted, like I put them all in a row, like, cause you can get them all on YouTube individually, all the different tracks. And I never watched it all the way through, but I've watched probably each individual one at some point, I think.
Yeah, I haven't. This is the first one I've seen at all, so I thought it was interesting. It reminded me of how I said that soundtrack dissonance, and here's these ladies, and they're ready to roll, and it's kind of it's kind of intense, but it contrasted is this upbeat music.
Yeah, I found out through the YouTube comments. Actually, I learned something. Usually, you don't learn something in YouTube comments, but I learned that it's the Southern Oregon Roller Girls, is what somebody said, and they said it with confidence, so I believe them. Yeah, I did feel that dissonance. I was like, or the disconnect. I don't know. I didn't feel like it fit, to be honest. Like I was just like, what does this have to do with the Roller Girls? But a lot of those pieces of the short film are that way. Some of them go really well with it, but I didn't feel like that one did.
So I did see a comment on there too, and it summed it up pretty well. It says, one of the comments was, "The young impulse of this video represents the lyrics well."
So maybe that's what they were going for. I don't. That commenter knows something I don't. Because it's that's what's neat about music and all art. Let's say all art in general. In that video is a piece of art, and it's in and of itself. It's left to the interpretation of the viewer or the person who experiences it. So, that may be what they were going for, and that's how that person. That's cool. I guess I could see that.
Yeah, I was like, I liked the way they said it, and then again, it fit with the 21 and Invincible. Just like, hey, we're living life, and we're gonna make the most of it. And well, I say, even if with these roller derby girls, even if they fall, which it looked they were going to, it was pretty intense. Even if they fall and they're bruised and everything, they're gonna keep showing up to these things, these events. And
they're living life to the fullest, I guess. So like we talked about earlier. Besides that, I didn't pick up any symbolism necessarily that had anything to do with the song. I don't know if the videos came first and the songs were laid over videos for particular reasons, or like any videos that this artist did, or I don't know how it was all put together. I've never dove into that, and maybe I should. Maybe I will for the next People and Things episode. Maybe I'll actually try to figure out how that all came together, because there must have been a cinematographer or filmmaker that was like, hey, I have an idea, or Andrew was like, hey, I have an idea, and then got together with that person. I don't know how I don't know how it came together at all. I found it interesting because it's not an official music video. It's just they call it a short film, and every song has its own segment. So where does this song rank in the catalog? If we're looking at the whole Andrew McMahon catalog, where does this one rank for you in that catalog? Like, not necessarily a number or anything, or like, he has 150 songs. Is it number 20? Like, don't worry about that. Just like where about and like, where does it fit for you?
I feel like it's, I don't want to say, middle is still good, right? Middle, I would say it's upper middle. So leaning towards, favorite. I know have never ranked some of his songs. I've ranked albums. My sister and I were listening in the car and we ranked all his albums, and I can't remember what we put where. But yeah, I would say like upper middle. Like I just like it, and it's definitely not like I don't skip it or anything like that.
Oh no.
So yeah, I like it.
Yeah, I would agree with almost everything you said because I don't skip it. I would say right in the middle of the pack for me. Like it's not one that I go seek out, but when it's one of those, and I've talked about a couple of these type of songs on this podcast. It's like there's a few that like it's there, and I'm like, yeah, I like it. Like when it comes on, I'll sing along. I enjoy it, but it's not one that I go to a concert and I hope he plays it, or I wait for it to come on, or like I go seek it out or anything like that. But it's fine. I like it just fine. But now that I say all that, I can't think of like my lower tier Andrew songs either. So like I don't know. Like
see, I can't.
yeah, there's probably some. Maybe I just can't think of them at this moment, but there's probably some. But I just like So I don't know. I'm gonna say middle for this one, because I enjoy it well enough, and I sing along when it comes on, and it's catchy.
No, I did. One night I was bored, and I'm messaging my sister. I was like, I'm gonna write down the songs that I don't vibe with. It's just not my favorite. I'm gonna write them down, and I did like a bracket style like showdown. And I was sending and I was sending her videos, and I'm like, okay. So I gave it a listen, and I kind of did like something similar to you as I looked in the background. I'm like, oh, I looked into I don't know, different things, and I'm like, oh, okay, like that kind of sways me a little more. And I ranked, and which I think it's like it's like 4 or 5 songs, and I still listen to them, but they're just not my favorite. And I put them head to head.
Well, I gotta say, speaking of that, diving so deep into these songs, there are songs that I end up enjoying more after that.
Yes.
There are songs I end up enjoying less after all of that. So careful what you wish for, I guess. Like or don't dive too deep. Maybe, I don't know. There was one song that I won't say what, but there was a song I kind of like. I was like, oh well. I used to really like that song. Why don't I like it as much? I really want to like it again like I used to.
I think it's interesting, though, because whenever, I listen to your podcast, I don't think I can get it through the whole thing without playing the song.
Yeah.
I pause it and I go back.
Yeah, definitely, yeah.
Yeah, and I listen to it after, and I'm like, oh, yeah. And, I mean, Canyon Moon was one that really stuck out to me after I listened to that episode. It was actually, I saw it on at the concert you were at the,
The live stream, yeah.
Yeah, I watched it, and I was like, I got so excited for Canyon Moon.
Yeah. You may have seen me getting excited if you knew what I looked like at the time, because I was like, I think it's during that song that you can see my wife and I jumping up and down. Our kids got such a kick out of that. Like we watched it the next morning. Like I kind of like zoomed through it just to like see if we were in it or whatever. And they were like, oh my gosh, like that's mommy and daddy jumping up and down. Like that. You guys are so goofy. Like, and it was because he walked right by us during that song. Yeah, that's a great one. And it's, yeah, I would say I appreciated that song more as I got to know it more. So, although I used to get that one and High Dive confused, I will never get them confused again. But before I started this podcast, I just get those two confused for some reason. I don't know why.
Right.
So, just some final thoughts here. It always seemed to me like this album, People and Things, was overlooked by fans and music listeners. But to me, anyway, that's from my perception. But it hit the Billboard 200 at number 9, which is shocking to me. Now, it didn't stick around long. But like I just never felt like it was like a popular album. But if you look at albums that have gone to number 9 or higher, like those are pretty popular albums. And I just never feel like this one had a big hit or like was on the radio or anything. And maybe I just missed it. But there was one Andrew album that got one step higher on the Billboard 200. Do you know what album that was? Do you have a guess?
It's an Andrew album?
Yeah, it's an Andrew album. But there's only one that's been higher than People and Things, which just amazes me. Because I never think of People and Things like as the top. I guess in terms of the overall consciousness, overall music consumption, it was at the top. Or just the best promoted.
Right. Was it Zombies on Broadway?
It wasn't. It was, and this was surprising to me too. It was The Glass Passenger.
Wow.
It went to number 8 in 2008. Those two, I would not have guessed that. I think Zombies might have been like in the 30s or 50s. Something like that,
right?
As its highest point. But yeah, and actually, I noticed that it was also the number 1 alternative album, at least for a week, which is really interesting to me. Like I'm like,
oh wow,
who was listening to this album? Like I feel like I knew Jack's Mannequin fans that didn't even know they had a new album at the time. Do you have any final thoughts on this song or the album?
Well, I think like I have a personal connection, but it's not something like I thought of right away. When I first heard probably the first 50 times I heard this song.
Okay.
It's just not something that crossed my mind, but I know, with the hey, we're all gonna die, it can be heavy for some people. Yeah. And I don't know, for me, like, I just feel like this song, it just shows that like death doesn't have to be this like looming, terrifying thing.
Yeah.
And so I lost my dad when I was 18.
Oh, I'm sorry.
And no, you're fine. But he had a lot of trials, and he had a lot of diagnoses through his life, but through everything, he was like the most positive person like ever. So he never gave up, and he was really open about the fact that like he knew he wouldn't always be around.
Yeah.
So it was kind of helpful in a way, and death was never this like taboo subject in the house. And even like, oh, he had this surgery or he had this. And he would just, joke to my mom and he'd be like, oh, after I pass, I want you to find a rich doctor, like joking around. And so it's like, I was a kid and I would hear that. And so it wasn't this, obviously it was very hard when he passed, but I don't know, it was something that definitely helped me through the grieving process, I think. Like,
sure. It
just wasn't this final thing. And, it's just knowing that he knew, and he knew, I mean, everyone knows that it's going to happen at some point to them, but he just was accepting of it, I guess. And it definitely helped. So it doesn't have to be this like looming, scary thing.
Well, I bet he knew that it would help you guys through the grieving process by staying positive and being present at the time. And I definitely get the sense that you're a very positive person, and I bet that comes from him, at least in part. So that's awesome.
Yeah.
Cool. Do you have any? Is there anything else that we didn't discuss that you'd like to mention before we're done with the song discussion and the just talking about music in general?
No, I don't think so. Check out, his tour this fall. And if you've always wanted to see him and you've just, kind of been like, oh, well, I don't have anyone to see him with, like, definitely just go. And the openers are always guaranteed to be really good. I found a lot of bands who just by opening for him.
Yeah. And
I've never had a bad experience with other fans either. They're just welcoming.
Yeah. The fans are so welcoming and so fun.
Yes. Yeah, just welcoming. And, if you're alone and you want to ask someone in line or next to you, like, hey, can I join you? And, you'll probably have a friend by, not even by the end of the night, like 10 minutes later. So
definitely. I told my wife I don't think I'll ever need to go to an Andrew concert and be alone the whole time, at least in the Midwest, because I met so many people at the Pontiac shows that are from like all over Ohio and Tennessee and Chicago area and Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
And so like all these, I think if I go in anywhere in the Midwest and see a show, I'm going to know people there now, which is so cool. And even when I'm going on the Rock Boat this fall, we already know people going to that. So
yeah, I've kind of had something similar because sometimes with being like northern or like upstate New York, a lot of bands or artists are like, okay, New York City, and then New York's covered, and it's like, like not really. It's, so he's gone to Albany, he's gone to Rochester, he's gone to Buffalo, Syracuse. So he's gone to all these different places. And so we've, kind of traveled around, my sister and I, seeing him at different places. And I do remember, seeing some people like, oh, hey, like, I remember you. And so it's just nice. Like, it's nice that he goes to these places. I know Albany, I'm seeing him in Albany in October, but it's kind of sad. The venue, it used to be this small, intimate, it was actually in a strip mall, and it was this amazing venue. And he goes, I love coming here. And he did. He would come a lot to that one. And now it's changed, so it's now in like downtown Albany, and it'll be different.
Yeah. I wonder if he'll mention that on stage, if he'll bring that up, like, oh, I really loved playing the other one.
I know. So it's nice because it's like, okay, same city, different venue, and we'll see how it goes. But no, it's exciting. And yeah, definitely just, if you're just like, oh, I don't know, just go. Like you'll have a blast. And I've seen him, I've seen 11 times now, and everything has been different, every single show. And it only makes you wanting more. Like it's every different, show is like a whole different experience. So definitely check him out.
I would agree. Well, thank you guys all for listening to the show and listening to Amy and I discuss this song. If you like what you hear, please rate the show on Apple Podcasts and wherever else you can. And if you do write a review, please screenshot it and send it to me at somethinginthewilderness@gmail.com, and I'll enter you into the contest to win a podcast t-shirt. Also, I do love listener feedback, so find us on Instagram, Twitter, or Facebook at Something in the Wilderness. And if you want to share your thoughts on a particular song with me on the show, shoot me a DM on social media or email me and we'll put it together. A big thank you to Amy for coming on the show. Thank you so much, Amy.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. So thanks for coming, and sing with me just one more time.